Welcome to Sword and Shield, the official podcast of the 960th Cyberspace Wing. Join us for insight, knowledge, mentorship, and some fun as we discuss relevant topics in and around our wing. Please understand that the views expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the views of the U.S. Air Force nor the Air Force Reserve, and no endorsement of any particular person or business is ever intended.
Welcome back to the Sword and Shield podcast. I'm Colonel Rick Erredge, 960th Cyberspace Wing Commander, and today my guest is Colonel Jeff Phillips, 67th Cyberspace Wing Commander. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning. How you doing? Thanks for having me today.
No, it's great. Thanks for coming over. Appreciate your time. We haven't had a chance to do this yet, and I'm glad we're going to do this here before you move on to your next assignment.
I am too.
Yeah, so really looking forward to, kind of learning a little bit about you and your journey, your Air Force story, and how you got to where you are, and then any leadership lessons that you've learned. Certainly through, the past two years has been a number of crises that we've all kind of led through. So interested in you sharing what you've learned.
Absolutely. Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about your story. And I know you enlisted first in the Air Force and then became an officer. And I know we've talked a little bit about some of the stories and really interesting path. And I think our airmen would be interested in, as they have goals to be an officer someday, that you can kind of share that journey with them, because I did the ROTC path, so my path is different. We really try to promote getting our enlisted to the officer corps. We've got about 19 people in the pipeline now. We want to continue that and grow that. And what's kind of your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a small town in upstate New York called Norwich, New York, and I graduated in 1989. I didn't enlist right out of high school. I was working some odd jobs. I worked in a bowling alley, did grounds work, but my real full-time job was in the produce department of a grocery store, and did that for a couple of years. Then one of my coworkers went off and joined the Air Force, and he came back after basic training and tech school, and I looked at Al Chrisman, and he was a completely different person. And he actually ended up becoming a chief in the maintenance community, and we were stationed together 20 years later, which was a cool story too.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But I saw how much Al had changed, and what good the Air Force did for him, and so I went and talked to a recruiter, and actually went with my best friend. We both signed up. We were supposed to leave for basic training within a week of each other, and then he found out he had asthma and was not able to go, but I still decided to go ahead and go. So I was an enlisted computer programmer. My first assignment was Langley Air Force Base, and I was there for 6 years. Met my wife about a year or so into being in the Air Force. She was going to college at Radford University, and we started dating, and we were making the trip every weekend between Langley and Radford. It's about a 5-hour drive to visit each other. We talked about getting married, but her parents were paying for her college, and I didn't want to pick up that tab. So I said, hey, let's wait until you graduate. And but at that point in time is when I decided I probably should get on the ball and continue my education as well. I had some very supportive supervisors. I'm still friends with them to this day, 29 years later, and they were very supportive about getting my education. So I'm a huge proponent of what the Air Force offers with regards to education. I used the tuition assistance program back then. They paid for 75% of the classes. Got an AFCEA scholarship that picked up the rest for me, and so I'm a big fan of AFCEA as well. And so I try to attend all their events and support their fundraising causes and things like that. And so I finished my degree in the 1998-99 timeframe. My wife and I talked about getting out of the Air Force. I didn't have a commitment at that point, but it was actually my ALS graduation where we made the decision to stay in the Air Force. She came to my ALS graduation, saw all the pomp and circumstance, saw how the leaders came out and supported the young airmen, and she wanted to be part of that. And so we both really want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And so instead of getting out and becoming a commercial computer programmer and making lots of money, we decided to continue our Air Force journey through OTS. And so,
do that journey. It's interesting you talk about, the reason you got into the Air Force to begin with was somebody that was influential in your life that came back, and it wasn't necessarily chance, but somebody you built a relationship with that drove you that way. And I think that's important as we go along our careers, that we run into people all the time that we don't know it at the time, that they influence us in a number of ways, and are either our leadership style, the way we treat people, or good and bad, right? We learn. It's all learning and data points for us. So who was that person that said you need to be an officer, Jeff? Or was it like you just seeing a mentor or seeing people that made you want to be an officer?
Yeah, so there was a couple other airmen in the shop that had gone the OTS route. Marty Jennings, he's actually a cyber colonel today. And then Nick Crow is still a friend of mine today. They both had finished their degrees. We all were going to the same college there on base at Langley. So I saw them kind of follow that path, and we all worked in the same office. So I think it was that leadership team in that office that was very supportive of education and pursuing the opportunity to go to OTS. But I'll say probably the most influential person, or I'll name two, were Natalie Cannella. She was a civilian supervisor at the time, and she was going through the Palace Acquire program, and she's still a great friend to this day. And she helped me to establish some goals, and she helped me set short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals, and that was really establishing those goals that set me on the path to finish my degree, apply for OTS, and I've tried to use that throughout my career, is set those short, medium, and long-term goals. And the other one was Tech Sergeant Greg Roberts at the time. He was my immediate supervisor. And he was very supportive about taking a lunchtime class, taking the class after work, and making sure I got there and got the work done, and was able to work my work schedule around those efforts. It's kind of funny, when I left to go up to OTS, he was jokingly mad about the fact that I was going to outrank him here in about 12 weeks. And so he actually finished his degree about a year later and went to OTS himself. And
good for him.
He's a colonel in the Air Force today, having served almost 39 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many great opportunities the Air Force has for us in order to grow and continue to develop and contribute in a way that we want to contribute. So, you're in the regular Air Force side, I'm on the reserve side. We still both found our path and opportunities, to end up here. And so, what kind of things throughout that path from lieutenant to where you are now, either leadership values or things that you really think helped solidify who you are as a person and a leader, would you like to share with us?
Yeah, one thing I tell everybody is, I try to take leadership lessons from all the different leaders I've worked with throughout that path. Some are good, some are bad, and implement those. It's simple things like how you treat other people, establishing relationships. One colonel that I worked for had highly polished leather shoes, and I thought that was just really sharp. So I started wearing leather shoes instead of quarter frames. So little things like that I picked up on throughout my career. But ultimately, I tell people, I think it's relationships you build with people along the way enable success. And then it's it's kind of cliche, but the bloom where you're planted motto I think is really important. We've all had jobs that we didn't like or we didn't think we were going to like, but if you kind of put your heart and soul into that job and do your best, I think that's always a good approach to take when you're going into a job that you may have some questions about. So.
Sure. Yeah, I'd say I had similar experience as well. You kind of take the deep breath and go, I think I can do this, know, and you get into it and you just dive in head first and take care of it. And at least for me, good things have always happened. Good opportunities have come about that. And doing a good job in the job that you're in, people notice. And I think that's really good, important lesson about attitude and effort is, I tell people attitude and effort is the only two things that you can really control.
Absolutely.
The rest you can't control. And so doing those as best you can, I think people will notice.
Yep,
and clearly those people saw that in you when you were an airman and want you to be an officer to lead them in the future. So I think it's amazing.
And as a brand new second lieutenant, I got singled out to be an exec because I had that prior enlisted experience. And I think those jobs just kind of set me up for the next job. Doing good in the one you're in sets you up for the next job that you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to have that airman officer as part of our teams. We don't need everybody from the Air Force Academy. We don't need all ROTC. We don't need all OTSers off street. To me, it's really important to have some of that experience, and you can look at an airman to an officer as, I don't look at him as a second lieutenant. Certainly you came in knowing already much more than the regular second lieutenant or ROTC knucklehead like I was, and that it kind of gives you a leg up, and you got that other opportunity and experience because you spent your time as an airman.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I think that's really important for us to continue to talk about. We want to continue to grow that in our force, and certainly got to find the right balance of how many, but good airmen deserve the opportunity, and so it's really important for us to kind of talk about that. So let's fast forward a little bit. And you kind of give us a quick rundown of the second lieutenant to how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I got to be the mission support group exec at Shaw Air Force Base as a brand new second lieutenant. The person I replaced went off to AFIT, another program that I had never heard about, and so I kind of modeled his path, and I went to AFIT after that job. Ended up back here at Lackland after AFIT in an AFIT follow-on billet, and started working in the 690th CSS, which is now part of the 688th Wing, and did that for a little while. And because I had exec experience and had gone to AFIT, my name got put on a list to go interview to be the aide-de-camp for then the Air Intelligence Agency commander. And so did that interview and got that job and spent 18 months following around a couple different two-star generals, traveled a lot, but got a lot of exposure to higher level strategy discussions, with STRATCOM and 8th Air Force and ACC, and learned so much in that 18 months. And that kind of set me up to go do what was called the old Air Force Intern program as a captain. Went to the Pentagon, did a couple of different rotations in the Air Staff and the Joint Staff, and then ended up having to stay there because that was the year that Air Force put a halt to PCSs. We were in extreme budgetary constraints. That was a blessing and a curse. We had lived out in Manassas, where my wife was from, and I had an hour and a half commute each way. So we got to spend a lot of time with her family then, but I had to endure that commute for 4 years.
Sure.
But that turned into a couple of really interesting jobs. Ended up doing a deployment to Iraq for 6 months, came back, and then spent 2 years working in the Colonel's Group, managing Colonel assignments for a few different career fields, to include the communications career field at the time, and learned so much about personnel in that couple of years that it really paid dividends. I was fortunate enough to get picked up to go to school after that, so I went to the School of Advanced Air and Space Studies at Maxwell Air Force Base. Tell people it was the hardest and most rewarding year of my career. We read about 200 or so books over the course of a year and had to write a thesis, but learned so much, and just learned a lot from my peers that were part of that program as well. And then got to do my first Squadron Command tour at Misawa Air Base in Japan. Had a great wing commander there. I probably learned more from him than most other leaders in my career. And the approach that he took to leadership, he was really focused on the mission, really focused on building future leaders. And at Misawa at the time, he was really focused on community engagement. Got there right after the big earthquake happened, so we were spending a lot of time working with the local community trying to clean up. And that mission leadership community mantra is one that kind of shaped my leadership philosophy going forward as well. And we'll talk about that after I give the quick recap. But so left Misawa, ended up going to U.S. Cyber Command. Didn't want to go there, but it was probably one of the best jobs I had as far as learning about the cyber mission force, and really set me up for future jobs, being part of the cyber community. Did that for a couple of years. Got picked up for another squadron command. Got to stand up the 390th down here at Lackland, one of the offensive cyber squadrons. That was really fun, starting something from scratch. I'm a self-proclaimed culture nerd, so we had to establish the culture of the squadron from scratch, and that was a team effort with all the plank holders from that unit, and that was a lot of fun.
There's not many opportunities in your career to get to stand something up from scratch.
Yeah, so being the first commander of something is something I'm really proud of. Went to SDE after that at National War College, and then got the opportunity to be
another hard school.
I
a
lot of reading.
I see a pattern here.
Yeah, so I tell you, the Air Force education opportunities are amazing, and so taking advantage of those when you can, you gotta do that. Then I got to the opportunity to go back to the ACC staff, back to where it all started at Langley Air Force Base, and be the exec for General Holmes, who was the commander of Air Combat Command at the time. Spent a year watching him lead, and that was a great year as well. People dread those exec jobs, but once again, I learned so much from one of our Air Force's best leaders ever. And his approach to people first, mission always, was infectious. I watched how much he cared about the people and putting the people first, and how that contributed to just being better at them executing the mission. Because if you take care of the people, they'll do anything for you. And so that really shaped my leadership philosophy as well. So I spent a couple years there, and then got to come down here and lead the 67th Cyberspace Wing. Tell people it's my third assignment to the wing, and it's my third and last assignment to the wing because I've run out of jobs to do. but it was truly a pleasure to come back to the Gunslinger team and be here for these couple of years where we got to defend the elections and respond to other events that happened in the world that we were able to be a part of.
Yeah, I think just between Langley and Lackland, the number of assignments back in, the path well,
yeah.
And your family knows the area well too. So, but I think your path has been it's super interesting to me because every job seems like it's been unique, and like you just took advantage of the opportunity that was there in front of you, and then that led to another door opening or to another door opening to more opportunities and exposure. And you certainly have been exposed to a number of senior leaders that maybe other people don't necessarily get. So you talked a little bit about what you learned from them and how that shaped you. And so how have you taken all this experience that's in Jeff, and then I'm wing commander guy now of America's most lethal cyber wing? Is that what we're calling you guys now?
We're the Hollywood Cyber Wing.
The Hollywood Cyber Wing, gunslingers. But how has that kind of culminated into how you're approaching it? And I know you've brought us into a number of your initiatives and really great partner with us and helping us, move our young new wing forward as well.
Yeah, I think partnerships are really important. So it's interesting you ask how you bring all that together. And so that's something I thought about a lot before coming into the job. What are our lines of effort going to be? What's going to be, what are the gunslingers going to get after, when I get down to Lackland? And so I spent a lot of time talking with both General Holmes and Lieutenant General Hawk as he was standing up 16th Air Force.
Sure.
Getting to see that from inside of ACC was great. Watching all the different conversations going on about everything from how the staff's going to be organized to what is the 16th Air Force culture going to be, right? The Phoenix culture, and kicking ash and things like that. And so got to kind of have all those influences, and I bounced it off a bunch of people as I was coming in, but there was three things I really wanted to focus on, shaped from I think my first squadron command and modified along the way, but really wanted to focus on mission, leadership, and culture, and all of those things powered by people. And so powered by people is one of our catchphrases in the Gunslinger family. We know we can't do anything without the people. Our mission's really unique. We get to do offensive and defensive cyber for the nation, and our airmen find innovative ways to keep doing that every day. I'm a firm believer in building leaders at all levels. I think whether you're an airman or a colonel in the organization, you can have a leadership role, and it doesn't just have to be leading the booster club. So our airmen are experts on the mission, and they lead other people that are their peers and sometimes their superiors on executing that mission. And so we established a leadership program that I'm really proud of. We call it the Gunsmith Program because every gunslinger needs a gunsmith.
That's awesome.
And we model it after ACC's Sword Series of leadership programs. And so we have Gun Forge that focuses on our civilian leaders, Gun Look that focuses on our CGOs, Gun Bearer that focuses on NCOs, and we just had our first Gun Athena to get after barriers to service for women and families that serve with us. And so really proud of that. And then from a culture perspective, we just kind of proliferated the gunslinger culture. It was already there. We had some great leaders that came before me that had to establish some gunslinger ethos and different things. We made some modifications along the way, but sure. We really, really wanted to proliferate being a gunslinger and what that means and how important it is to be part of the culture and the family.
Yeah, I find it fascinating that you spend your, so this is simplifying it, but you spend your entire career for this opportunity. And maybe more, but I think for me, the wing command is what I wanted to do from a long time ago. And then you get 2 years to do it. And you got to take all this thing, and then you're going to get in the job, and you're going to sprint. And then we're going to throw things at you like worldwide pandemic, and then social unrest, and then political overtones, and now at the end of your tour, and then let's throw in the election defense, which you mentioned, and then at the end of your tour, a war that has the possibility of widening in Europe that your teams have had significant influence in trying to shape and control their narrative and help the people of Europe. So looking back, do you feel like you were prepared for the command and everything? And then what would you maybe approach differently? I think that's important to reflect and figure out, hey, I learned throughout my command, I wish I would have done this. Is there anything that you're thinking about now?
So I think the Air Force does prepare people to lead, and I've been really happy and just humbled by the opportunities I've had to lead other organizations, and I think that prepared me for this. It is a little overwhelming at first, the first day in the seat, and
sure.
Then you talk about a 2-year sprint. I took command on July 2nd, 2020. On August 2nd, I looked at Colonel Velasco, my vice wing commander, and I said, "Hey, Omar, 1 month down, we only have 23 left." And that seems like it was yesterday. And
wow.
Here I am, and I only have about a month left now. But so it does go by fast. The pandemic definitely shaped how I had to lead the 67 Cyber Wing. I'm a people person. I want to go out and give high fives to airmen and thank them for what they're doing and hear their stories, hear where they're from, hear about their families. And that was really hard to do during COVID. And so we had to modify that somewhat. So I did virtual squadron immersions with all the units when I first got in the seat. We could knock that out over the first couple months. It just wasn't the same. It was really hard, honestly. But it was at least establishing those touch points and getting to know those airmen a little bit, albeit virtually. Then we finally did get to start traveling, probably a year or so into command, and that helped. Going out and being able to shake hands and things was great. And now things are opening up a little bit more. Some of the things I looked really forward to, being a wing commander, things like the MLR at ACC, things like the commanders conferences where you get to go and spend time with all your peers and build relationships and learn from each other. And that didn't happen. A lot of those were virtual events, and that was really challenging as well. But we modified, we adapted, we hopefully overcame. And you're right, the gunslingers are having great influence in a lot of unprecedented events, in not just the U.S. but in the world.
Yeah, I think. I guess you take whatever life gives you and you go with it and you adapt and be flexible. And I guess that's part of leadership that I think the Air Force that has prepared us for. And going forward, I think there's a lot of things that we've learned and done through the pandemic that we continue to move forward. I think we've learned what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I think connecting with airmen, I think, is one of those things that we always talked about and knew it, but I think it was even more heightened, and we really realize that now. And so as you connect with your airmen at the end of the tour here and you see what's going on in the world and see what we're doing, what kind of things, if you're going to look back 10 years from now, what kind of things would you like to see the gunslingers evolve to or move into, or from the reserve perspective where we could partner more? What kind of, as you kind of sit back and reflect, maybe come to change of command in five commanders now and say, wow, they've really taken this thing that I had and now moved the ball forward this far.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that things operations in the cyber domain are more normalized by then, right? And I tell people we want to get to that point of what we call normalized really fast, but it doesn't happen overnight. And we constantly make analogies to the air domain. And so if you make that analogy with the maturation of operations in the cyberspace domain, we're somewhere around the 1920s as compared to where the air domain started. They started in 1908 or 09 flying planes. Yeah. As part of the military, and it's taken 110 years to evolve to where we're at today. So it's going to take time. So hopefully 10 years from now, we're a little more normalized. Hopefully we figure out ways to build a ready force that is always there to support and defend the Constitution. I think the reserve is a huge part of that. I think we have to be able to give airmen opportunities to get trained and serve time on active duty, and if they want to make a decision to transition into the reserves, I think we have to capture that talent on the way out the door. And as you know, we're working on a partnership for that together, and how we can best capture that talent, and then we can build that reserve capacity that we need, that we can call on for our nation when it's time to do so. And so I think that partnership is really important, and hopefully 10 years from now, we have excess capacity, and we're not talking about still talking about readiness and how we don't get enough training slots and things like that to build that ready force. And we have it in a way that our airmen aren't overburdened, and they can have a normal work-life balance and still do what they love to do.
Yeah. What I've seen, just kind of being this outsider, we just have a little bit, we don't have a ton of mission in your wing, but everybo's all in. And I think, that's important right now. But you did mention about the balance, and the ops tempo is what it is. And I don't see that changing significantly in at least the short term here. So hopefully the reserve can bring additional, we're building some ways to bring additional capacity to you to maybe level that balance out a little bit, and then build the surge capability in the future. Yeah. So really appreciate your teamwork on that. What's next for Jeff? What are the Phillips doing?
I know this is going to come as a shock, but I'm going back to Langley Air Force Base.
Whoa! I should have put money down on that one.
Back to where it all started again.
And maybe you'll be back here after that assignment.
You never know.
Lots of opportunities.
There's lots of opportunities. So, my youngest daughter is still at home with us, and for the first 18 months of our assignment here, all she wanted to do was get back to Virginia so she could be at school with her friends. And then, of course, in the last 6 months, she's decided she really likes it here now and
of course
wants to stay.
Yeah.
But we're headed back to Langley, and I'm going to be the ACC director of staff up there. So hopefully I can take my previous experience there, leverage relationships that I already have, and jump in and be a Phillip round pretty quick.
Yeah, that's a great opportunity for you too, and hopefully set you up for what's next. And I know you're not done. I know there's still a lot of energy left in Jeff. So I really want to appreciate your time you spent with us today, and certainly the partnership and helping us build this thing on the fly, and what the reserve's trying to do, and how we participate and support your team and 16th Air Force mission overall. So I'll leave you with the last word to wrap up today's podcast.
Yeah, I'll echo the appreciation. It's great to be here. Great to talk about the journey that we don't probably think about often enough. And so thanks for the opportunity to do that. And I'll close with a gunslingers, light them up.